I want you to think about the last time someone at your job got promoted. Not you, someone else. The person who was absolutely brilliant at what they did. The one everyone went to when things got complicated. The one whose output made the whole team look good. Now think about what happened 6 months after they got that promotion. If your experience is anything like the data I've been sitting with for years, they became a different person. Stressed. Scattered. Somehow less impressive than they were when they were doing the job they were born to do. And the worst part? The team they now manage isn't performing the way it did before they took over. Nobody talks about this out loud, but everybody sees it. Here's what I want to put in front of you today. The promotion you've been chasing, the one that feels like the next logical step, the one your family keeps asking about, the one you've tied your self-worth to, there is a very real possibility that saying yes to it is the single most damaging career and financial decision you could make right now. Not because you're not talented, because you are. And because the system was never designed to keep talented people in the roles where they're most valuable. It was designed to move them out. Today we're going to break that down completely. The economic principle behind it, the real data that proves it, and the exact way to handle a promotion offer if you decide the smart move is to turn it down without torching your career in the process. This is not career advice your HR department will ever give you. So stay with me. Let me tell you how most people think about their career. They see it as a ladder. Simple. Linear. You start at the bottom rung, you work hard, you climb. Every promotion is a win. Every new title is proof that you're on the right track. The goal is to get as high as possible before you retire. That mental model feels logical. It's what we were taught in school. It's what every LinkedIn post about hustle and ambition reinforces. Work hard enough, stay hungry enough, and the ladder goes as high as you're willing to climb. But here's the problem with that picture. A ladder only works if the skills that get you to one rung are the same skills you need for the next one. And in most careers, that's not what happens. The skills that make you excellent at level 3 have almost nothing to do with what level 4 actually requires. The job changes shape entirely. You go from being the person who does the work to being the person who manages the people who do the work. And those are two completely different jobs that require completely different wiring. A brilliant surgeon doesn't automatically become a great hospital administrator. An elite athlete doesn't automatically become a great coach. A developer who writes code that makes grown men cry doesn't automatically become a manager who can handle a team of 12 people with competing egos and different career goals. The skills aren't the same. The mindset isn't the same. The daily experience isn't the same. And the data, which we're going to get into shortly, shows that the connection between being great at the job you have and being great at the job above it is not just weak. In some cases, it's actually negative. The better you are at your current role, the worse you might be at the role they want to promote you into. That's not an opinion. That's what the research says. In 1969, a man named Laurence Peter wrote a book that was supposed to be funny. It was a satirical take on corporate bureaucracy. He called it the Peter Principle. The premise was almost too simple to take seriously. In any organization, every employee tends to rise to their level of incompetence. The business world laughed at it. Then management researchers started testing it. And stopped laughing. Here's the exact cycle Peter described. You start a job. You're good at it. Genuinely good. The kind of good that gets noticed. Because you're good at it, you get promoted. Now you're in a harder job. You work at it, you figure it out, you get good at that one too. So they promote you again. This keeps happening. Competence leads to promotion. Promotion leads to new challenge. New challenge leads to more competence. More competence leads to another promotion. Until it doesn't. At some point, you land in a role where the skills required are so different from what made you great before that no amount of effort closes the gap. The pressure is different. The work is different. The people problems are different. And for the first time in your career, you stop performing at the level that got you here. Here's what Peter identified as the trap. Once you hit that wall, the promotions stop. Obviously. You're not doing a great job anymore, so nobody's moving you up. But here's the part that should genuinely worry you. You usually don't get fired either. You just stay there. Stuck at the level where you finally broke. Down. Permanently installed in the one role in the whole organization that you cannot handle. Stressed every day. Blocking the people below you from moving up. Delivering mediocre results that frustrate everyone around you, including yourself. The system didn't fail. It worked exactly as designed. It kept moving you up until it found the ceiling of your competence. And then it left you there. Peter called it your final placement. I call it the career trap that nobody warns you about before you walk into it. Let me make this concrete because the abstract version is easy to dismiss. Picture the best software engineer at a mid-sized tech company. This person writes code that other developers study. They solve architecture problems in their head before most people have figured out what the question is. They ship features that work the first time. They are the person every product manager wants on their project and every developer wants to sit next to. The company wants to reward them. They've earned it, so they offer them the engineering manager role. More money, better title, a team to lead. On the surface, this looks like a natural progression. They know the work better than anyone. They understand what good looks like. Who better to lead the team? But the job of an engineering manager is not writing code. It's running one-on-ones with developers who are frustrated or burned out. It's navigating the political tension between the product team and the engineering team. It's writing performance reviews that are honest enough to be useful, but careful enough not to destroy someone's confidence. It's sitting in budget meetings, defending headcount. It's managing the person on the team who is technically good but impossible to work with. Every single one of those things requires a skill set that has nothing to do with writing clean code. Empathy. Political awareness. Patience with people who think differently than you. The ability to have hard conversations without making enemies. Our brilliant engineer might have zero natural aptitude for any of that. Not because they're a bad person, because they were hired, developed, and promoted for a completely different set of strengths. So now the company has done two things at once. It has lost its best coder, and it has created a mediocre manager who is quietly miserable in a job that doesn't match who they are. Two losses disguised as a reward. Now, I know some of you are sitting there thinking, that's a nice story, but I'm different. I can adapt. I'm smart enough to figure out the management side. That's a fair thought. So let's put the feelings aside and look at what the numbers actually say. A few years ago, researchers published a study in the Quarterly Journal of Economics. The paper was literally called Promotions and the Peter Principle. They weren't testing a theory. They were testing real data from over 200 companies, focusing specifically on salespeople and their managers. They chose sales for a reason. Sales is one of the few fields where performance is brutally objective. You hit your number or you didn't. There's no way to spin it. What they found was clean and damning. The single strongest predictor of whether a salesperson got promoted to sales manager was their individual sales volume. If you sold the most, you became the boss. Simple, logical, fair on the surface. Then the researchers looked at what happened to the teams these newly promoted managers took over. The top-performing salespeople, when they moved into management, led teams that performed worse than the teams managed by average salespeople. Not slightly worse. Measurably, consistently, significantly worse. There was a negative correlation between how good you were at selling and how good you were at managing a sales team. Why? Because selling is a solo sport. It rewards aggression. Individual focus. A drive to win that sometimes requires being ruthless about your own numbers. Those traits don't just become Neutral when you move into management. They become actively harmful. They make you impatient with people who learn more slowly. They make you frustrated when the team doesn't hit numbers the way you would have hit them individually. They make you a bad coach because you can't understand why what was obvious to you isn't obvious to everyone. Managing requires the opposite traits. Patience. The ability to develop people who think differently than you. Finding satisfaction in other people's wins rather than your own. The study also found something that should change how every company thinks about promotion decisions. The salespeople who made the best managers were not the top individual performers. They were the ones who had a pattern of collaborating on complex deals, the ones who helped close other people's sales, the ones whose total numbers weren't the highest but whose teammates performed better when they were around. Those people had management aptitude, but they rarely got promoted because the system was blinded by the flashy number, individual sales volume, and completely ignored the subtle signal, collaborative behavior. The system is not rewarding the right people, and it hasn't been for a long time. There's another layer to this that comes from statistics, and it's one of the most underappreciated forces in career dynamics. It's called regression to the mean. Here's how it works in plain terms. To get a promotion, you usually need to have a standout year. Not just a good year, an exceptional one, the kind where you blow past your targets and make leadership take notice. Now think about what goes into a standout year. Some of it is skill. Genuine, developed, repeatable skill. But some portion of it is always luck. The market was moving in your favor. You landed a client that someone else could have gotten. A competitor dropped the ball at exactly the right moment for you. When you get promoted based on that peak performance, statistics predict something uncomfortable. Your performance in the next period is likely to drift back toward your natural average. Not because you got lazy, because the lucky conditions that helped create that exceptional year don't repeat on command. You regress to the mean, but now you're in a harder role. So you have two things happening at once. The natural pullback from your peak performance combines with the increased difficulty of the new position. To everyone watching from above, it looks like you suddenly became a different person. The star performer who got promoted looks like they fell apart. In reality, what happened is more straightforward and less personal. The promotion system selected you at your statistical high point and moved you into a situation designed to expose the gap between that high point and your actual average. You didn't fail. The selection mechanism failed you. Understanding this doesn't just protect your ego. It changes how you evaluate promotion offers. The question stops being, am I good enough to do this? And starts being, was my recent performance genuinely representative of my consistent level, or did conditions conspire to make me look better than my baseline? That's a harder question, and most people never ask it. I want to give you a different way to visualize your career. Not a ladder. Something more honest. Picture a graph. The vertical axis is your competence. How good you actually are at the job, how much genuine value you produce. The horizontal axis is job level. Junior, senior, lead, manager, director, executive. For most people, that line doesn't go up smoothly forever. It has a shape. It starts lower when you're new. You're still learning the basics. It rises as you develop. At some point, it hits a peak, a level where your natural wiring, your developed skills, and the job requirements all line up perfectly. This is where you do your best work, where you feel sharp and capable and genuinely useful. Then, if you keep climbing, it starts to come back down, not because you're getting worse as a person, because the job is requiring things that don't match who you are. The further you push past that peak, the wider the gap between what the job needs and what you actually have. There's a point on that curve where you cross from being genuinely competent into what Peter described as your final placement. Past that point, every additional rung you climb makes you less valuable to the organization and less satisfied in your own life. The tragedy, and I mean this, is that most people never map this curve for themselves. They just keep climbing because that's what you're supposed to do. They walk straight off the edge of their own competence and spend years trying to figure out why work suddenly feels so hard. The career move nobody talks about, the one that actually requires more confidence than taking the promotion, is identifying where your curve peaks and making a deliberate decision to stay there, not because you gave up, because you did the math. Let's talk about what a mismatched promotion actually costs you, not philosophically, in real terms. Start with the financial picture. Yes, the promotion comes with a salary increase, usually somewhere between 10 and 20%. That feels significant. It is significant in the short term. But here's what that number doesn't capture. If the new role pushes you to your level of incompetence and your performance suffers, your future earning trajectory stalls. You stop being the person getting the best performance reviews. You stop being the person leadership sees as a rising asset. Your raises become average. Your next promotion, if it comes at all, takes longer. Meanwhile, the person who stayed in the role they owned completely, who became the absolute best at what they do, who built a reputation as the irreplaceable expert, they built a different kind of career equity, one that compounds, one that makes them a threat to competitors, one that gives them leverage for compensation conversations that the struggling manager in the next office never gets. Then there's the stress cost. And I want to be specific about this because stress is not just a feelings conversation. Chronic workplace stress has measurable effects on decision-making, on physical health, on relationships outside of work. A 20% salary increase does not compensate for a 60% increase in daily pressure, especially when that pressure is coming from a role you're not naturally built for. And then there's the opportunity cost. Every year you spend in a role that doesn't fit you is a year you're not deepening your actual expertise. The person who stays in their zone of excellence for 5 years becomes genuinely world-class. The person who spent those 5 years struggling through a management role they weren't built for has neither the management skills nor the technical depth. They've lost ground in both directions. The math on saying no to the wrong promotion is often better than the math on saying yes. Now, we get to the part most people don't know how to handle. You've looked at the offer, you've looked at what the job actually requires, you've run your own version of the competence curve, and you've decided the move doesn't make sense. How do you say no without the organization deciding you've checked out? The first thing to understand is that you're not refusing a promotion, you're proposing a better use of your value. That reframe matters because it changes the entire tone of the conversation. Start with what I call the value audit. Before you sit down with your manager, you need to be completely clear on where your actual contribution is highest, not where you're busy, where you're producing results that matter. What would the organization lose if you moved into management and could no longer do the technical work? Be specific, have numbers if you can. Then have the conversation. And here's language that works without sounding like you're backing down. You say something like this: "I've thought hard about this offer and I genuinely appreciate it. But when I look honestly at where I create the most value here, it's in doing the work, not managing the people doing it. I want to be your best specialist, not an average manager. I'd like to talk about what a senior individual contributor path looks like here, with compensation that reflects the level of contribution I'm making rather than a title change that moves me away from the work I actually do best. That's not weakness. That's self-awareness. And in organizations that actually understand talent, which more companies are coming to do, that kind of clarity is respected. You're also protecting the company. A bad manager costs more than a good specialist. You're offering them the version of you that produces the best outcome for everyone. Now, if their answer is that the only path to better compensation is through management, pay close attention to that. That's a company telling you they only know one way to reward people. And that is a data point about whether this is a place worth building a long-term career. Here's what this all comes down to. The career game has been sold to us as a vertical climb. Up is always better. More responsibility is always the goal. The highest title wins. But the data doesn't support that story. The research is clear. The economics are clear. Climbing past your natural level of competence doesn't just make you less effective. It makes you less happy, less financially secure over time, and less valuable to the organization that promoted you. The people who win quietly, not the loudest winners, but the ones who are still standing in 20 years, still earning well, still respected in their field, are often not the ones who climbed the highest. They're the ones who found where they were genuinely excellent and had the discipline and the self-respect to stay there. Knowing your peak on the competence curve and deliberately working from that position is not a career strategy anyone puts on a LinkedIn post. It doesn't make for a good story at dinner parties, but it produces better outcomes. Financially, professionally, and personally. The smartest person in the building is sometimes the one who looked at the promotion offer, ran the numbers, and said, "Not this one." You now have the framework to make that call for yourself. Drop a comment below. Have you ever watched someone get promoted straight into a role that destroyed them? Or have you turned one down yourself? I want to hear real examples. They help everyone watching this figure out their own situation. If this shifted how you think about your career, hit subscribe. This channel is built around the kind of financial and career thinking that actually moves the needle, not the motivational stuff, the real mechanics. I'll see you in the next one.